Welcome back to Inside Politics. We're looking at the first 6 months of the Trump administration in the White House. We're talking with Linda Schacht from Lipscomb University. She teaches and writes about presidential communications. She's a senior fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government up in Boston, and she's also with Lipscomb University, where she is also the founding director of the Andrews Institute for Civic Leadership. Linda, communications are very, very important for presidents. This administration seems to start out with some efforts to try to communicate. They've had these weeks of Infrastructure Week. They've had Made in America Week. I think it was this past week. Yet those things almost always get caught up in something else. And in many cases, the administration even steps on its own lines. What do they need to learn about communications that they're not doing right now?
Well, that you can win the battle and lose the war of the narrative. And I think one of the things that the president and his press operation have faced is his own attitude toward the press is, while every president has felt they didn't get good press coverage, he has taken it to a war on the press. I mean, even Richard Nixon kept his war private against the press. And by making the press, in his words, the enemy of the people, he has changed the dynamic in a way that is not healthy. It's not healthy for the press, and it's not healthy for him.
You've seen some research that basically indicates that President Trump is actually getting his message out. If you go through the networks, some of the people he talks are fake news, but it doesn't seem to be helping him much overall in the polls. His poll numbers are the worst of any president after the first 6 months.
That's right, and it's absolutely fascinating what this study of his first 100 days showed about his press coverage. First, President Trump is right. He is getting very negative coverage. The interesting thing is, unlike other presidents and other leaders who say, oh, I'm getting negative coverage because I'm not getting my message out, between 40 and 50% of his actual coverage is nothing but him talking or his tweets. So he is getting his message out. It's just that it is resounding as negative. The other thing is his intensity. The intensity of his negative press is more than any president ever.
Did you say it's 3 times more coverage for a new president than any president's gotten?
Well, that's right. And 3 times more coverage and 1 to 4 more negative.
This use of Twitter just continues to fascinate me. It does remind me of the way FDR tried to use the fireside chat, the way Kennedy tried to use the live televised press conference. Is this a permanent now part of presidential communications, or is Trump unique in this? Because he tweets more than a lot of people I know that are hardcore tweeters does every day.
No, number one, I think it is now a permanent fixture of people running for office, whether it's at the local, state, or national level. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. But there's some recent research that shows one reason that his tweeting is effective, and that is 500,000 tweets from the campaign were analyzed, along with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton's tweets. And what they found was Donald Trump's tweets were more morally charged and emotional. And for that reason, they got retweeted twice as much. And I think that's the important thing, that 140 characters can actually move people.
There actually seems to be a lot of confusion within his own White House communications team, a lot of talk, a lot of rumors that there are going to be changes up there, yet so far there has not been any major sweeping changes up there. Is the problem that Donald Trump really wants to be his own press secretary?
Oh, yes, definitely. And he has said that he's the one to get his story out. I recently wrote that everybody on the press team should resign in order to protect their own credibility and also to give way to perhaps someone he would trust. And there's a rumor that maybe he's going to bring in yet another spokesperson. But changing the people behind the podium when you have a president who's going to undermine them the next day is not going to solve the problem.
It appears that Donald Trump continues to play strictly to the base, to the 40+% people that elected him to office during the recent election last year. Why is there no effort to try to reach out not just to Democrats but to independents? And independents seem to be where his numbers have
fallen off. Yeah. Well, first, no president has ever decided just to lead and communicate only to his base. And so from the inaugural address on, what we've seen is a message tailored for that 36 to 40%. But there's a reason for that. That 36 to 40% actually represents 80% of the Republicans in the country, or 80% of Republicans who are polled. And that means Congress is still a little afraid not to do what he wants.
Keeping your Washington hat on, looking at how President Trump is handling his own potential allies or known allies up there, is he putting some doubt in the minds of people? For example, the House passed the health care bill. The president said he supported it. Then while the Senate was negotiating their bill, the president said the House bill was mean. Well, I'm sure all the people that voted for that on the Republican side were like, what? You're supposed to be on our side. He seems to be making these same kind of attacks on Jeff Sessions, a former senator who's now Attorney General.
And Jeff Flake, who he said he'd put a primary opponent up against in his state if he didn't vote for the health care bill.
Attacking the senator in Montana, who's also up for re-election this coming year.
That's right. That's right. So here I think is a place where the Republicans have to be very afraid for the midterms, and that is, can you see the ad that has the president saying it's mean, and then that celebration that they had with the beer kegs and everything in the Rose Garden? That's an ad for Democrats in the midterm, particularly if they don't pass a bill, because then the House Republicans are stuck with it, or they do pass a bill and it's proven to be even worse.
The intensity level of all the things that Donald Trump is involved with across the board, and that White House is involved with, is beyond anything I've ever seen. Usually administrations are only on a fairly narrow margin of what they're going to do. At the same time, Trump has stopped more or less the daily press briefing. At least they can't put it on camera. They can't televise it live, as has been done for many years. Is he playing games with the media? Is he throwing out all this stuff to give them lots of things to go out and chase? What's the strategy behind all that?
Well, as long as the press is focused on, oh, you're not giving us access. Right. Yeah, as long as they're focused on that, they're not focused on the issues.
He's got the media looking at inside baseball on that.
That's exactly right. And one of the things that came out of the study I was mentioning about his coverage is a recommendation to the press to focus on the issues, to get out of the White House briefing. They're not giving you anything anyway. Follow the policy to the agencies and out into the country and see how those policies are actually affecting people. And let him tweet, and don't chase every tweet.
Linda Peek-Schacht's our guest from Lipscomb University. We're talking about the first 6 months of Donald Trump in the White House, and no, we haven't forgotten about Russia. We'll talk about that in the third break. Stay with us after this break on Inside Politics.